Hello, I'm Ben, DivKid, and welcome to this video on OCTA, a faithful yet expanded set of 808 analog drums in one module from NANO Modules. Here's what's to come. This video is sponsored by NANO Modules. NANO Modules say that OCTA is 808 soul with modular control. It's an authentic, faithful to the original circuit's analog clone of the kick, snare and hi-hats from the classic Roland TR-808 drum machine. And it's worth noting there's a free software version, there's a plugin for VCV Rack if you'd just like to play around and test this for free. Link down below for that one. Now going through the features, and let's do this with sound. Starting with the kick, we have our trigger input, a direct output, a CV over volume and drive, and a mute switch. We then have a volume and drive, which can saturate nicely, a tone control, a tune, and a decay. Going to the snare, we have the same trigger in, direct out, CV over volume and drive, and mute switch, control over volume and drive, tone, which crossfades between the two kind of body sounds that you get on an 808 snare, and then an added snap, and noise decay. And then the closed hi-hat again, trigger in, direct out, CV over volume and drive and mute, drive, which is volume and drive as the others are. We have a tone for the hi-hats. The open hi-hat will choke via the closed hi-hat. If I mute it, that will remove. And it shares the tone control and adds a decay control for the open hi-hat. Now with a basic beat playing, unmuting all of these, our output section here has a mix output that we're currently listening to, a one knob compressor, which can really saturate, a tilt EQ, so tilting to the high end, boosting highs, cutting lows, and then counterclockwise, boosting lows and cutting highs. There's also a sidechain output, which is an envelope follower over the mix output, and I'll go through a couple of different ways to use this in the video. It's worth noting that patching out of the direct outputs doesn't remove them from the mix, and this is handy for patching out around a modular system for parallel effects and processing, and again we'll do lots of that in the video. I go through pushing this way beyond classic 808 sounds in this video, alongside making some classic sounding beats and some more extended modular process beats too. The timing index is on screen and linked in the description, so skip around, and without further ado, let's dive in. So here's a patch that focuses on showing how you can do parallel compression with an external mixer and the 808 drums here. It got a little out of hand as I started playing with the sidechain envelope follower signal output and doing things like using it for chords. And for ducking this stereo bass with Eclipse and the SD font. Now first things first, the direct outs here are coming into this mixer and I've put them into some effects and panned them around to build a stereo mix that I like, with the snare, through some reverb, kick sounding fairly clean just in the mix, and the hi-hats, one hard left and one hard right. And they're coming through some delay, so they're scattered around in stereo, and their dry sounds panned in stereo. So an affected stereo mix there. And they're fairly clean sounds with that bit of delay and reverb. I've then taken the direct out, which goes through the compression, and patching outputs here doesn't remove them from the mix, so we can output from both and do different things here. So the compression, I've slammed up full, so it's really driven and saturated. I've tilt EQ'd a lot of the high end out. And it's pretty filthy. If I mute that in the mix and bring the dry sounds back in, and then bring this compression back in parallel, so two parallel layers, we've got some of the clarity of the dry outputs here with effects added, and then really driven, crunchy sounds that don't have the effects. I was then looking at the envelope follower here on the output, and that led me to patch a stereo oscillator into a stereo filter that's modulated by some LFOs, but I'm inverting this sidechain out, this envelope follower out, in a utility here, offsetting and inverting it, this ducks around the drums. So the whole beat sidechains that bass. So here's a beat where I'm using the CV controls to control the drive and the dynamics. And it adds so much groove and life. I think it really does sound very good. I do have the direct snare output, which doesn't remove it from the mix, which is the main thing we're monitoring. That goes into some reverb that's 100% wet. It's a kind of boingy spring. But let me mute that in the mix for now, and we'll listen to the main out here with a tiny bit of compression. I'm muting things. Here's the kick. And that peak in that green trace there is the CV sequence coming in to CV the level and the drive of the kick drum. And you can hear just my beat 1 just peaks with a little bit of drive. We're just getting that red LED on the drive there lighting up. And the snare. Beats 2 and 4. Up at full level there on the blue sequence, again to CV the level of the snare. And my ghost notes and my little kind of buzz roll or ratchet in the sequence are much lower levels. And the hi-hats, which is really where the magic is. Red trace here for the closed hat. It's just got such a good kind of head bob and groove and feel to it. With some dynamics. Dynamics being level changes, or you can think of them as velocity. And bringing the kick and snare back in. It's just got such a good groove, it really feels alive. The open hi-hat. Equally has a CV sequence. but the 16th note hi-hats are choking it out on the closed hat there. And just to end on, if I remove these CV sequences, it sounds pretty dull and lifeless in comparison. So here's a simple example of just some sidechain ducking with a sidechain output. Now because I'm using a house beat with a 4 to the 4 kick, this green tracing cable here is what the envelope out gives us. It's a positive going envelope follow, so we'd need to invert this behaviour to duck something like a synth line, which is what's happening here. If I mute the drums, you can hopefully hear this ducking effect. Now here's the drums by themselves, just coming straight out of the main out here. The green trace, as I say, is the sidechain output, and if I remove its effect in a VCA here, this is my synth line, which is an envelope controlling the channel of a VCA with some oscillators coming in, and that goes out to a filter and some reverb effects. Now all of that, including the reverb, comes back into channel 3 here on Alt. So channel 1 controls my oscillators with an envelope, as per this rhythm that you can see in here. As I say, out to some filters, out to some reverb, back into channel 3. And because we have inverted CV options here, or the option to attenuate a CV input, instead of having a positive envelope, which is just playing on top of the drums there, we can manually add some level and then invert, which is what this yellow signal here is doing. I've inverted this externally just to demonstrate what an inverted version looks like on the scope. So if I shorten my kick, which is the main thing on this sidechain output, you can really play with that sidechain. Could even extend this right out to some like long pad-like behaviours. Let's bring the drums back in, say without the kick. Hopefully you can see that side chaining and hear it as well. Without it, this sound just plays straight through the mix. If we invert the sidechain output, controlling an already open VCA, we get that ducking effect. So here's an interesting one where OCTA isn't doing the beat, but rather the bass line. Now, this is the beat that's playing, it's just some external samples. Muting it, this is the output of OCTA through the ST font. God, does it sound good. Now, let's wind this back and go through what's going on. So this patch came from me wanting to Audiorate trigger this and just see what happens. It's often something that I do with drum modules. Yes, I'm aware that makes me a little bit weird. Now, the sound of this coming out of the unit here, let's just open up the filter, remove any modulation, and remove some sequencing for the moment as well. This is the sound coming through an open filter. Now, it's triggered by an oscillator. It's the green trace here and these cables. It's triggering all 4 channels from an oscillator. If you want to listen to the square oscillator, here it is. So that oscillator triggers the drum sounds. And if we go through them one by one, what's quite interesting is there's a point at which it just cuts off. So it can't go very high, but it can be Audiorate triggered. And the tone sort of acts like a filter on that bass drum. Tuning has a bit of an effect, but not huge. And the length has an effect too, but again, not huge. Now again, that's the square wave that's triggering. Here it is on the snare. You get a cool effect with that tone blending between those 2 bits of the snare body there. And you can bring in the noise. Hi-hats. Closed and open. So if I go back to the kick drum there, and let's add a volt per octave sequence. Let's just get in that range where it plays nicely. The kick's like this kind of growly resonant body, but just playing with all of them on, and with a really interesting just kind of bass arpeggio here. Against the beat again. So Audiorate trigger your drums, be weird like me, and you'll get some interesting sounds. So turning this into a kind of bass thing, I wondered if I could actually use it like a whole voice, using the CV inputs. Again, all channels triggered at Audiorates, it's from this square wave, from an oscillator again. But could I use the CVs to fade these in and out? And I thought, let's go for some kind of drony, pulsing Doomscape. So here it is dry, I'll add some effects in a moment. And this is an envelope to channel 1. And then LFOs to the snares and hi-hats. And a hi-hat playing a rhythm on channel 4. Let's plug in some effects. Sounds killer. So far from your classic 808s. So here's a beat that I'm really quite proud of. I don't often say that, but I do think this sounds really good. And one thing that I really like with 808 style drums, with them samples, analog clones, or say the real deal, they really blend into other things and serve as a kind of spice, even if they're not the kind of main elements of the beat. If I just mute everything on Octa here, you can hear I've quite a comprehensive beat, playing some samples and effects already mixed here in the system, and that beat by itself sounds good. But if I mute all of those in the mixer, what's coming off the Octa is all this extra spice, the interest, that extra bit, that kind of last 10% that I think makes the beat special here. It's very performative. You can use the open hi-hat almost like a long ride sound. Add this kind of jittering hi-hat and emphasize the kick, bringing the beat back in. Listen to what this kick drum adds. It's playing the first beat, but not every beat the kick plays. Here's just the kick. And an extra note, we get this extra push, this extra shuffle. And if we listen to my clap, this is a sample. Here's adding the snare from Octa. So kick and snare without Octa. And then with it, kick, that low end extra rhythm just works incredibly well. Adding in my extra hi-hats that are external to Octa, I can then add in this open hi-hat like a ride. And just perform with muting those triggers, and notice the mute mutes the trigger, so any long notes like this kind of ride open hat sound don't cut off harshly. And then this extra hi-hat, this kind of little ratcheting rhythm. I hope you've been head bobbing and face kerning like I have. 808 drums really do work well with other drum sounds too. So here I just wanted to see how filthy we could get, mainly with Octa on its own, but with a little bit of processing as well. Fasten your seatbelts, kids. It's pretty nasty. If you got this far in the video, drop an 808 sync in the comments. Head to patreon.com/DivKid to support what I do, gaining access to exclusives and the Discord community. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.